You didn't want to do a daily halacha dedication in honor of your birthday?
There's someone.
23rd? It's tonight or yes, today?
Granddaughter of Hillel is sick. He didn't receive the email. I went.
Say again, what are you saying?
We received on WhatsApp that Hillel's granddaughter is sick. This is better. You don't read the
I don't keep up every second.
He tends to sum it up. He's lower the voice. So maybe we could
Which Hillel are we talking about?
Wait, I'll show you.
Is that what you're saying?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening to everybody.
Sarah Mushka Bat Shira. Sarah Mushka Bat Shira.
Please daven for Hillel's granddaughter. She needs to question. So Amushka Bat Shira.
Pinchas Eliyahu Bas Ben Sarah.
Yosef and Yehuda Eliezer.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I want to begin with some, I guess we can call announcements. Next week, Emet Hashem, Tuesday night, we're going to have our annual cheese party in honor of Shulas, the halachas of cheese party. Everyone's welcome to bring physical cheese if they want, but we're going to be discussing some basar v'chalav laws and Shulas preparation laws.
When?
Okay.
Next week?
Same time, same place, just a week later. Okay, next Tuesday night, Emet Hashem, we're going to do all the Shulas halachas in Emet Hashem. Second of all, there was an incident this past Shabbos with a wild dog roaming around Tzfas, and unfortunately my daughter happened to fall victim to it. And she fell. The dog chased after her and she fell, and we had to get x-rays. Baruch Hashem, it wasn't a break, but she's in a bandaged hand. The point is that the law is that dogs are not allowed to roam loose. It's forbidden. An owner whose dog is caught roaming loose, he can be fined, he will lose his license, and the dog can be taken away, put down, as they say. So therefore, this is a responsibility of all good Samaritans, as they say, to l'davech. I already brought it up to one of the members of the community council here, and they said they're going to deal with it, but you know how these things work. Tell people don't put enough pressure, they don't deal with anything. That's how it works. So if you see something, say something. I'll mention, according to Allah, we have a joint responsibility for the safety of the community. And one of those matters, yes, it was. It had a collar. And one of those matters is that it says a person is prohibited from holding a dog because it's dangerous. It can attack people. And that's why there's all these also civil laws in every state and country regarding dog ownership. So it's not a matter, well, it's not my problem. If a person sees something, if you can do something about it, you have to let people know, let the authorities know. So hopefully this issue can be dealt with and taken care of. Okay, that was one part. The second part is that not that this is relevant to anybody here, but I thought it was appropriate for it to be said. The way it says, especially in the city, the Kabbalah city of Tzfas, when you put things in the air, it begins to enter other people that weren't even in the share. So hopefully it'll work. There was a recent case of vandalism in the Bais of the matzevos, of the tombstones. I just want to mention that people may think that the guy's dead, the person's dead. I'm not really stealing anything. You can't steal something from a dead person. According to halacha, to do any damage or any act of disrespect to a mace is a most terrible sin. But aside from being the most terrible sin, it is also a very dangerous thing to do. Very, very dangerous thing to do. Even with Goyim, a person shouldn't even mess with Gentile dead, let alone to mess with a Jewish mace. There's many halachas that we find and that the Chevra Kadisha keep in order to keep the peace within the Shamis. They ask Mechila about 10 different times throughout the process of the Kvura and the Levaya. Why are they asking Mechila all the time? Because When a person dies, it just means he's no longer limited to his physical body. There's a lot more ways of getting at you now. And so that's why we're very, very careful. The Chevra Kaddish is extremely careful. And we have all these halachas of Beis HaChaim, all these, the whole siman in Shulchan Aruch, a few simanim, but a whole siman dealing with Kved Beis HaChaim, the honor and respect that has to be showed in a cemetery, such as you're not allowed to walk over graves, you're not allowed to sit on graves, you're not allowed to get hana, you're not allowed to benefit from the fruits in a cemetery. There's a lot of different halachas involved. So for someone to vandalize a tombstone for whatever reason, it makes no difference, is a terrible thing and a very dangerous thing. We hope that whoever did it should have the sense to ask mechila from the mace in front of 10 people, as halacha requires, and they should become prominent activists of taking care of honoring a Beis HaChaim. Rabbi once gave a directive to an individual in this type of situation, not the same that he vandalized, but he had a lack of respect to the Beis HaChaim, that he had to give a large donation of tzedakah towards the cemetery. So, as they say, it doesn't pay off. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to finish Siman Gimel, chapter 3 in the Shulchan Aruch, and then we're going to start off again from Siman Dalet, chapter 4. Siman Gimel, if you remember, was dealing with bathroom-related laws, and we had one last halacha that we were going to do, that we already read inside and we didn't yet do outside. Those of you who've been following our daily halacha series of the past 2 days, Bashkacha Pratis, ended up being exactly this topic. It was pre-scheduled already weeks ago, and it happened to fall in the same week. So this is regarding the subject of delaying one's bathroom needs, or in other words, in the Hebrew terms called Bal Tashaktu. So there are some parts we did not do in the daily halachas. It's a 3-part series. The 3rd part didn't yet come out. We're going to do that now, at least in a summary. So we read 2 weeks ago, if you recall, before Lag B'Moshe, we read inside the Mechaber rules that it's forbidden for one to withhold himself if he needs to use the restroom. And what we explained thus far was as follows: that there is a rabbinical prohibition for one to, it's in the end of the chapter, Siman Gimel. There's a rabbinical prohibition called Bal Tashaktu. The actual verse is written in the end of Parsha Shmini when it's discussing the prohibition against eating non-kosher animals, especially insects, shkatzim uramash. And there it says, Bal Tashaktu is nafshei seichem. Now the Chachamim in Maseches Makos Daf Tezayin learn from there that there is also a prohibition, meaning that verse is coming to teach us that there's also a prohibition against one withholding himself if he needs to use the restroom, as by doing so, the person is being meshaketz his nefesh, he's defiling his soul. And as the Mekubalim explain, that this is actually quite literally, and that's why the verse doesn't state tashaktu es gufeichem. It doesn't state that your bodies become defiled, but it states that your souls become defiled by withholding one's needs. And the reason for that is that Arizal explains as follows in Shara Mitzvahs, Parsha Shemini. He says like this: that every food that we eat contains good and contains bad. Right? That's we know that from Kabbalah. Right? There's the sparks and there's the taiva. The sparks is the holiness. The taiva is the mundane and the klipa. And we know that physically. We all, after we eat, we have to use the restroom eventually. The body absorbs the nutrients and the body expels the waste. So that is an exact replica of what's going on spiritually in the food. The soul is incorporating the kedusha, the holiness of the food, and it's expelling the klippas of the food. Now, when the body says it's time to get rid of the klippas, and the person insists on withholding the klippas, says the Arizal, it causes that the neshama begins to become contaminated by that klippa that's being held in. And that's why one of the main rules, you can say, or guidelines of people who want purity of mind, first that Ben Ish Chai says that someone who doesn't follow this, he brings in the name of the Chesed Avram, Avram Azul, a famous Kabbalist from Hebron, that when it doesn't follow this, the klippas contaminate the mind. The person's mind becomes all clogged with all these shavazaris and gets bothered by all these crazy things, taivas, and other things. He says this is partly due to this issue, that when a person holds himself in, it can cause the defiling of the soul. And that's why it says, nafshei seichem. And it's not just defiling the body, but also the soul. However, this is only a rabbinical command. It's only the Rabbanan. That's the bottom line of how the place can rule. That's how the Alter Rebbe rules. And that is how the majority of the place can rule. This is a side for the Sefer Charedim. Sefer Charedim, who was buried right over here, famous student of the Arizal, of the Ramak. He was a Shamash of the Arizal. He was the Arizal Shamash.
Askari? Is it Askari? What's his name?
Yeah. Baal Sefer Charedim. He's buried next to the Arizal.
Rabbi Eliezer Askari.
Rabbi Eliezer Askari. Yeah. You'll see his cover down there. Baal Charedim, so he learns that it's actually a biblical obligation. It's a biblical prohibition, meaning for one to withhold himself. Practically, as I said, we do not rule this way, and therefore, since it's only rabbinical, we will learn that there's certain leniencies that are relevant. What are such leniencies that are relevant, that are recorded? So the place can record the following leniencies in place. Before I get to that, I'll make mention that this prohibition applies both to urine and to bowel movement. They both contain the prohibition of withholding oneself. By urine, the Alter Rebbe writes that it contains an additional prohibition of danger. It's dangerous for a male to hold it in, and therefore it is an additional prohibition in addition to Baal Teshakatsu. Okay, so what are the cases of exception? So case exception number one, to find a private area. The person needs to find a private area to go to. He's not obligated to shame himself in public. According to the Charedim, he is. It's their Isa. You don't push away Torah laws because you're going to shame yourself. A person's allowed to not put on tefillin because he feels ashamed? Of course not. You got to get over it. According to the Charedim, I don't know what would be with him. But according to the way we rule, bottom line, since it's the Rabbanon, we push away this mitzvah because of what's called kavod habrius, respect for humanity. In many cases, the Chachamim deferred their decrees in the case that it would sabotage, in the case that it would infringe on a person's honor, meaning that it would be shameful for him. You find this regarding famously in the Gemara discussing tzitzis. We'll discuss this eventually when we get to that sin of tzitzis. That if a person is walking in public and his tzitzis became ripped and puzzled, but he didn't notice and you did, let's say you're the guy who stepped on his tzitzis, and then you see all these streaks under your foot, and he didn't notice anything, he was oblivious. So if you tell him right then and there, he's going to start taking off his clothing in the middle of the street. So the truth is, if Chacham lived in our generation, they probably would have said you had to, because today everything goes. Today no one looks the other way. You're lucky you're wearing a shirt still. No one cares if you're taking something off in the middle of the street. But nonetheless, that's the halacha. The halacha doesn't change. Because of Kvei Bris, we allow him to continue walking till his home, and then we tell him, you walk with him till his home, or you send him an SMS to be sent in another 5 minutes when he arrives home. That's another example. Even though that there's an issue to walk with a talis katan without tzitzis, nonetheless, because of shame, we defer this matter. The same thing would apply in the case that a person is giving a public speech, or the person is even having a conversation with somebody, or giving a shir, or whatever it is, that it would be shameful in that situation for the person to suddenly excuse himself. Then in those situations, it is permitted for one to withhold himself. Again, this contains the heter kvei bris, in order for him to finish, and then he can go ahead and do his needs. However, there is absolutely zero allowance given and stretched towards someone who desires to continue learning. He doesn't want to do Betul Torah. He does a calculation. If I hold it in for another hour, anyways, I'm going to have to go in another hour. So I'm going to gain now an hour of learning and nullify and deduct one bathroom break. Think about the 5 minutes of Torah learning. So say the place can better 5 less minutes of pure Torah learning, the 5 more minutes of Torah learning going to Klippa.
Going to?
Klippa. So writes the Ben Ish Chai.
Kedusha, or you're davening and you just want to wait that one more thing to hear.
There's no heter. That's a very good point. Somebody, let's say he needs to go to the bathroom, and it's before Musaf, and he wants to catch Musaf. So if he is in the state, so if he's the chazan, it's quite embarrassing for the chazan to tell everybody, guys, a few minutes, I'll be back. It doesn't really work that way. Now, he doesn't have to accept the job, but if he's already taken the job and then suddenly, in the middle of Ashra, he gets hit with a need, then in those situations, I said before, that's he's in public, he's in a public podium, Kvei Bris pushes off this rabbinical obligation. However, in a case where you're a private citizen davening, then obviously you have an obligation to go to the bathroom, and if you miss Kedusha, you miss Kedusha. That's God's will. What can you do? So you miss Kedusha. Whatever it is, if you gotta go, you gotta go. Now, we have another exception. And the second exception is as follows. In a case that a person is able to withhold himself for a certain amount of time, then he doesn't have to go. In other words, the Chacham didn't say as the second a person feels the urge, so he has to go right away to the bathroom. Rather, they said once the urge has reached a certain urgency, then the person has the halachic obligation to excuse himself and go to the bathroom, unless it's Kvei Dabriyas, as we mentioned. So what is that urgency? So we have two opinions. And it's very interesting because the Alter Rebbe is the only pasuk that I know of, the first, after him, others recorded from what he wrote, but the first that I know of the Achreinim, who records the two different states of urgency, two opinions, two approaches. One approach is that it's sheer parsa, the amount of time it takes to walk a parsa, which is 72 minutes. A person can withhold himself for 72 minutes, meaning he assesses at the time of the feeling of the need that, okay, I definitely can hold this in for 72 minutes, then he doesn't have to go. He can continue learning, he can do whatever he wants. He can play video games. He can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have an obligation to go to the bathroom. However, once he assesses that, no, 72 minutes will be too much, then he has the obligation to go. Now, how does a person tell 72 minutes? That's you got to be kind of prophetic to know how many minutes, how to measure. Like, are you measuring it until the point that you're knocked unconscious and you don't have control of your bowels? Like, how does it work? What is the 72 minutes? So, the Nemukei Rechaim, the Munkacher, and the Ishla Avram and others give us a nice definition, which is basically that if a person is able to remove his mind from the urgency, then that's a sign that he can withhold for 72 minutes. Meaning, if you move on now to another subject, right? We all know that sometimes urges to go to the bathroom are psychological, right? Sometimes the mind plays tricks on us. So, it could be a person feels he needs to go, then he moves off his mind to a conversation, to learning, to whatever he's doing, and he completely forgets about his need for the bathroom. That's a sign he doesn't have to go. And obviously, a person's allowed to do this trying to verify how strong is the urge. Is the urge absolutely necessary to go to the bathroom or not? The second opinion, which I'll already tell you now, we do not rule like, the Alter Rebbe, at least in the Siddur, that omits this opinion, even though he wrote it in his Madura Basra. I've mentioned in the past, the Alter Rebbe in these halachas has three versions of halachas. So you need to learn all three to know his actual final stance on the subject. We have his first version of Shulchan Aruch, his second version of Shulchan Aruch, and his Siddur. So in the first version, he doesn't discuss this at all. In the second version, he writes two approaches. In the Siddur, he only writes the approach of the 72 minutes. That's how we read. What is the second approach, though, that some other place can follow based on the Alter Rebbe's Madura Basra? It says the following, that if a person's muscles, that only if it's so urgent to the point that if a person would stop trying to hold himself in, it would come out automatically without even needing to push, then that's a sign it's too urgent, meaning that pushes it off a lot. So maybe it's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes instead of 72. But whatever the case, we follow the 72-minute rule. As I said before, the matter of Hesed Hadas. Regarding flatulence, it is recorded in the Siddur and in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, chapter 103. There is no Isser about the Shachzu of do not withhold flatulence. It is permitted to withhold it, even not for Kvei Dabriyas. There's no issue involved.
I thought when if you have tefillin, it's a problem.
Yeah, we didn't discuss davening. We're going to discuss that next regarding how this affects davening. If you need to use the bathroom for davening, etc. But outside of that, it is not a problem. Okay. Two more points. In the middle of sleep, somebody wakes up, feels they have an urge, but they also have an urge to continue sleeping. So can you just roll back to sleep? So once again, the Ben Ish Chai points out on this that there is no head to the person has to get up and use the bathroom. He can't hold it in even though he really wants to get sleep. However, there are some places who are malamet chus in such a situation. The best thing is just don't wake up, right? Continue sleeping. You mean don't wake up to begin with. Second point, you have some people, especially after they learn this halacha, that they get anxieties. If I have to go, I don't have to go. I learned that every time you feel you have to go, 72-minute rule, you put your mind off, and because of that, their mind is always on it. So because of that, they're going to the bathroom every 5 minutes. You have people, no, not just to do with this halacha. You have people, they have weak bowels, they have weak muscles in the urinary tract, and it's an illness. They see doctors. Doctors, it's called frequent urination. And it can also be a sign of diabetes, God forbid, but that's another issue. So that's something obviously everybody should check out, but it also sometimes is because of weak muscles and psychologically. So the place can point out, the place can dealt with the Shiloh. This was not something new for our generation. And they said that in such a situation, a person absolutely is allowed and is to hold himself in for a certain periods of time to train his body, even if he needs to go. Train and strengthen his body. Now, obviously, someone who just drank 2 gallons of water and he just went to the bathroom, needs to go to the bathroom again, he shouldn't be doing this training because we don't understand why he's going to the bathroom so often. He just drank, so much water. But in a regular situation, and a person has this weakness, he is allowed to, based on medical directives, to withhold himself for these purposes. The Tanzer Rebbe gave a general time frame of 3 hours. He says you can have 3 hours between bathroom uses. That if you're going more often than that, then you're allowed to hold it in, unless you did something, ate extra, you drank extra. But absent of that, he says you're allowed to hold yourself in. Regarding davening, so this is really a subject in and of itself, and is actually not recorded. Its main place of being recorded is in chapter 92. Tzaddik Bais, the laws of going to the bathroom during davening, before davening, etc. It's touched upon a little in this chapter as well, and we'll just give the basic summary of it, which is as follows. Before davening, the halachas here change a little bit, both regarding before davening and during davening. Before davening, the halacha changes that any urge, doesn't matter how long you can hold yourself in for, you must relieve yourself before davening. A person is not allowed to begin to daven with an urge to use the bathroom. Doesn't matter if it's 72 minutes or 500 minutes. It doesn't matter how long he can withhold himself. That rule is followed during the day, not before davening, not before prayer. But before prayer, a person has an obligation to use the bathroom. And if he doesn't, then it's a shayla if his prayer is kosher. Someone who had an urge to, for example, to defecate, and he withheld himself, and he davened Shemona Esrei can be considered even b'diavad no good, and he will have to daven again. So it's something very severe that a person has to use. If he needs to use the bathroom, he must use it beforehand. Now, so that's a given. That's regarding before davening. Now let's talk about during davening itself. During davening itself, we have a major debate in the Rishonim regarding if a person must, should, or shouldn't use the bathroom if he needs to, in the middle of davening. One argument is, how can you daven while you have waste inside of your body? The other argument is, how can you take a break in front of the king? You're talking to the king. What are you doing? We said before, if you're the chazan, you're not going to take a break and walk off. You're talking to the Eibishter. How are you going to take a break? I'm just going to give the bottom line of this. The bottom line, the way the Alter Rebbe rules in the Siddur, the way we follow, there are other opinions here. This is the way we follow, is that the Alter Rebbe has a very unique way of ruling. The following: that one who did not feel the need to use the bathroom before davening, and then suddenly in middle of davening became aroused with a desire to relieve himself, then if he is past Baruch She'amar, if it's to defecate, he does not go to the bathroom at all. You don't go. You have to hold yourself in until after Shemona Esrei. Now, if you can't, you can't. I understand. But if a person's able to, they are to hold themselves in. Now, obviously, as you mentioned, flatulence is a very severe prohibition with tefillin on. So if a person is having flatulence, then obviously he should take off his tefillin and do what he has to do. But if that's not an issue, then the halach is you would have to hold himself in until the end of Shemona Esrei. Again, when we get chapter 9, we'll go through all the opinions. This is the Alter Rebbe's opinion. There are other approaches here regarding this.
A distinction between urination.
Yeah, I didn't finish. So regarding defecation, as I said before, it's prohibited to stop and go once you're past Baruch She'amar. And regarding to urinate, the Alter Rebbe says we leave it up to you. If a person feels the need to urinate, then he may stop and urinate in the middle of Birchas Krishma. It's your decision. So regarding urination, he said do what you want. You can decide yes, you can decide no. And regarding defecation, he holds that it's forbidden to do so.
On a Torah reading day, is there another?
Once you're done Shemoneh Esrei, you go. What does Torah reading have to do with it?
Okay, I don't know. Shemoneh Esrei is important. Torah reading is important.
You're saying middle Torah? No. This is only from Rosh Hashanah to Shemoneh Esrei. That's it. If you're before Shemoneh, let's say a person began feeling it before Rosh Hashanah. That's it. He's got to take off his tefillin and go. Right now, he has the obligation to use the bathroom, even if he can hold himself in. He's not allowed to.
What about before the Torah?
If you gotta go, you gotta go. There's no heter. We just said before, there's no heter to withhold oneself for learning Torah. There's no heter. So a person, if he has to go before Torah, he goes. What can he do? These are the interesting Jewish Yetzaharas, Hasidic Yetzaharas, as they say. You know, the doctor says it's a kanas lefashis, you have to eat on Yom Kippur. He can't. How can he eat on Yom Kippur? He says you got to go to the bathroom. The Torah directs you to miskriyas HaTorah. It's very hard for the Jewish conscience to accept it, but we got to train ourselves to be, Kabbalah says. Davening in front of God, speaking with God.
This is the Raisa.
Torah learning?
Yes. And this is the
Torah learning is also all the time. We don't see it in Isser. You ever heard of the Bachrim or anyone learning Torah follow the prohibition of not talking mundane matters while learning? Can you talk mundane matters during after Pesukah de Zimra? Can you make a hefsek? All right. Okay. What we're going to do now, this is the end of chapter 3, Siman Gimel. There are a lot more bathroom-related halachas that are spread within other chapters that we're going to get to eventually. For example, we have Siman Vav and Zayin regarding Asher Yatzar. We have later on about 10 different simanim dealing with in Hilchos Kriya Shema, starting from Ayin Daled and onwards regarding bathroom use. So that emerges when we get to it, we'll discuss it in detail. But I'll just give a little bit of a summarized version of some of these halachas.
Simple question. During the hefsek, can you say the bracha she'etzah?
The answer to your question is that min hadin, it's permitted to say Asher Yatzar between the paragraphs. However, the best thing is to wait until between Yishtabach and Yetzer Ar. However, being that our attention span and memory, even in our young ages, isn't the greatest, and if we don't say Asher Yatzar right away, most likely we will run over that middle place where we're allowed to say it, and probably not remember to say after davening. My suggestion is that you just say it in between the paragraphs. So as soon as you're done the paragraph, you say Asher Yatzar.
So you should go, in practical terms, how that works logistically is you should finish a paragraph, go to the bathroom and say Asher Yatzar. Right?
Or you leave in the middle of the paragraph. You can leave in the middle of the paragraph.
Come back and finish the paragraph.
That's another option. You have both options. Okay, so I'm just going to give a little summary of a few more halachas that we have here that are, as I said, a while away, a few miles away of simanim. Okay, so regarding performing holy matters in a bathroom, what's permitted and what's not permitted inside of a bathroom. So obviously, as we know, it's forbidden to think words of Torah or to pray inside of a bathroom. And when I say pray, I don't think anyone here ever had a challenge from the Yetzer Hara, let's daven Shachris in the bathroom, or let's daven Mincha in the bathroom, let's say Kriya Shema in the bathroom. But prayer is also, God, please help me with this. That's also biblical prayer, and that's forbidden to be done in a bathroom. Learning Torah is forbidden to be done in a bathroom, even in thinking. This is an area where it's more severe than Erva. By Erva, which is a modestly dressed woman, a person is allowed to think Divrei Torah. Even during intimacy, it's permitted to think Divrei Torah. It's only forbidden to speak it, to verbalize it. But in a bathroom, even thinking it is forbidden, which is, of course, as we know historically, what led on the Gra and the Misnagdim of that time to hold of the opinion that God is not in the bathroom, is why else would it be prohibited to learn Torah in a bathroom unless God is not there. This is an extinct approach in Judaism. Nobody holds of this today. But they based it on this halacha.
Singing.
And we already spoke about that. We don't voice our voice in the bathroom because the Jew's voice is holy. And the klip is, remember, Tony. You should never get to know him. The bathroom demon. Remember? We spoke about him. Tony, the bathroom demon. We said that because of him, we don't speak in the bathroom. So we asking about singing. Well, he nourishes from the voice of a Jew, so it's better not to speak. It's better not to make a sound in a bathroom if you don't need to. One interesting thing we find is that it is permitted to read. I'm not saying verbalize, I mean even think mentally. Read in your mind stories of tzaddikim in a bathroom. So you can go through history books of tzaddikim inside of a bathroom. Obviously not Tanakh, that's Torah. And obviously not, you can't take a name Yaakov and read all the stories of the Gemara in the bathroom. But a regular newspaper you can take, I mean, if it's a kosher newspaper, then as long as it's not the Torah section, then you can take it into the bathroom. What's the problem? If it's a non-kosher newspaper, then it belongs inside the toilet itself. It doesn't belong to be read.
So Mishpacha magazine had done a nice feature story about a Rav and the neighborhood.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, all those things you can read in the bathroom, so long as it doesn't have Divrei Torah. Once if it contains Divrei Torah, there's no isser of bringing a picture of a tzaddik to a bathroom. And I'll tell you even a little secret. Don't tell this to anybody. Those tzaddikim actually went into bathrooms themselves. There is no prohibition of bringing a picture of a tzaddik in the bathroom. Some people don't. Let's say to our Rebbe, we won't do it because of regesh. It's hisragshus. It's not halacha, and that's fine. And that's understandable. But we will not bring our Rebbe into the bathroom because of our connection to him and a view of him as a great tzaddik that we don't want to put him there. But nonetheless, there is no isser to do so, and there's no problem of having pictures, reading something in the bathroom, even there's a picture of a chashuv, Talmud Chacham, etc. So where do we know this from, that it's permitted to read stories? So there's a few Chassidish Svarim who write about this. But we do also have a story of the Alter Rebbe that's recorded by Nachum Rafal Khan and Shmos Sikurim. Very interesting story. That he writes that Alter Rebbe at one point had some kind of illness which required him to be for long periods of time in the bath. I don't know if this was a bath with a bathroom or it was just a bath, but it makes no difference because a bathhouse has the same din as a bathroom. So for all intents and purposes, the halachas are exactly the same. And how would the Alter Rebbe spend his time? Now, it's actually discussed in the Poskim. What does a Talmud Chacham do when he's not going to the bathroom? He's always thinking Torah. He can't stop himself. So he goes to the bathroom, he's still thinking. You're in the middle of a sugi, you're going to go into the bathroom. He's still thinking. The mind, it's automatic. You can't shut down the computer. There's no button to press, The mind just keeps, it's a big iskafia. So a lot of places can discuss this. This was a major discussion in the codifiers. So the Alter Rebbe said, to keep my mind off Torah subjects, tell me Sipurei Tzaddikim. Tell me stories of tzaddikim. And he says that his children would take turns telling him Sipurei Tzaddikim while he was in the baths for healing purposes. And till they came to a story of, the story was with Shmelka of Nikolsburg, the brother of Pinchas Horowitz, the Baal HaFla. And then when they came to the story of Shmelka, the Alter Rebbe says, no, Shmelka, that's already too much, not for a bathroom. Not for a bathroom. Skipped. Next story. So now the sons wanted to know, why not? What's wrong with telling the story of Shmelka? We went through everybody. We did so many stories. So Alter Rebbe says, I'll tell you a story of Shmelka when I leave. And the story that Alter Rebbe related to them was that, and there's a few versions of this story. This is the version written in Shmos Sikurim, as before Nachman Khan tells over. That the Alter Rebbe told him that one time Shmelka of Nikolsburg performed literal Tchias HaMesim, performed literal resurrection. How did he do this? There was an individual who, and again, you've probably heard the story in other versions, and I don't want to go into now the different dialects of the story, but this is the version written there, and also different names. But so it says the following, that a certain individual who was very wealthy had lost his money, lost his wealth, and he had to go begging. And back then, if you got a good approbation letter, a good askama from Rabbanim, you would make nice money, nice income in your begging career. Otherwise, you'd just be another beggar. So he went ahead to the Rabbi of the city, And he asked the Rav of the city, who was a very famous guy, for a letter of approbation, and the Rav gave it to him. He was a famous philanthropist. He had helped a lot of people, so the Rav gave it to him. And so this is what he did for about a year. He went around collecting money until he had enough money to go home. One time he lodged at a person's home for Shabbos, and another pauper was lodging in the same room as he was. And he asked him, how are you so successful? How do you make so much and I make so little? So he told him the story. This is a letter I have of approbation. And, when people see the name of this gadol, they give. So this pauper, his roommate, became a little jealous and came up and desired to have this letter of approbation. And basically he stole it from him. He stole this letter of approbation as if he was the one getting the approbation. And now he'll be successful. Well, this individual eventually passed away. The person who stole it eventually passed away, and he was found on a dirt road, and they found on him this approbation, and they all assumed, because it says whose name it was, that this was the philanthropist from this and this city. So what do you do in those situations? The first thing that comes up, besides with the Cheved Kadisha dealing with the Lovaya and Klura, is to allow his wife to remarry. So he shouldn't remain in Aguna. So they immediately sent witnesses with testimony to Nicholsburg. This is where it took place. And so his wife can get remarried. And his wife did. His wife got remarried based on heter of the Bezdin. And after a year, she gave birth to a son. Oh. This guy, her husband, had a lot of bad fortune. After he lost his letter, he then didn't have enough money to make it back. By the time he made it close to his home city, he already ran out of all of his cash. So he had to go back and collect again. And now he had no letter to collect with. The kitzur, on the 8th day from the birth, which is the day of the bris milah, this guy finally arrives to town. And he wants to go home. He wants to go to his wife, to his kids. He comes to shul, he sees, oh, there's a bris, he'll have a nice fat meal. And he realizes, oh my goodness, his wife had a son. It's not from him. Mm. He asked, what's going on? And they said, oh, this is the almana. This is the widow of this and this man. And, the Bezdin gave, he died. It's me. Basically, when the wife saw him, the way the Alter Rebbe said the story is that from shock, she passed away. She died on the spot. Yeah. And when Shmelka, who was the Rav, he saw this going on, Shmelka said that basically Shmelka did Chias HaMesim and revived him. That's the bottom line of the story. That's the story the Alter Rebbe said.
What about the boy?
So the boy in such a case is a mamzer. There's not much to do about that. Interestingly, regarding this type of situation, so the situation unfortunately is not that rare, especially after World War II. This was a very prevalent common case where we would have no contact with the husband. Nobody would know what happened to him. Did he perish with all the 6 million, or did he survive? And people wouldn't know. So obviously they tried doing a lot of research and a lot of work. They would have different lists. But Rabbanim in Europe, this was one of their toughest questions they had to deal with in being Mater Agunas. And there were cases that they were Mater Aguna based on the facts in front of them, and the facts were wrong. There was a case in the 50s. A woman had already been married. A woman after Holocaust already was remarried for 4 or 5 years. She already had children from her second husband. And the husband one day shows up in Yerushalayim. The husband, who was thought to have died in the Holocaust, showed up in Yerushalayim. And all chaos broke loose with this family. And the Pesach Tzvi Ephraim came up with a very, very interesting. He came up with something very interesting of what to do. The halacha situation, the dry halacha situation is, the children are in Zayim. She can't live anymore with the first husband. She can't live anymore with the second husband, and the child. And she did nothing wrong. We don't blame her. She obviously went through the system. She got permission from the Bezdin, but that's the halacha. The halacha is that if it ended up that the case was misjudged, it was a mistrial. They said the guy was dead. He's alive. He came back. So it was a mistake. We don't say, since Bezdin Paskin, he's dead, he must be really dead, and he's not alive. No, he's alive, and we retract the Bezdin's heter. And that's the halacha. So he came up with something very interesting. There's and this is what he did, was a major controversy, as you can imagine, in the halachic and the rabbinic world. He came up with the following. There's a halacha that's written in Hilchos Gittin that a person, before he gives a get, right, before he tells her to get out, he has to be mevatel all of his haidas, which means the following. If a husband or even a buyer or something, before he gave the get, the divorce, or before he went ahead and did the purchase, he went in front of two witnesses and told them, by the way, that ceremony I'm about to do, purchasing the object, or that ceremony I'm about to do of giving the divorce, I'm doing it out of duress. It's nullified. I don't believe in it. I don't want to do it. I'm just doing it ceremonially. I'm not doing it willingly. And that helps to nullify the get. So if the get is given, everyone thinks it's kosher, and she gets remarried, really the get was never kosher to begin with, and the children are there. And because of this possibility, the Chachamim forbade anybody from doing this, number one. And number two, they would make, before the person gives the get, they make him announce and say in front of the Bezdin, I hereby nullify all and any meidas, proclamations, and nullification that I may have ever said to anybody, and he gives the get right away. However, in this situation, obviously, this situation, the husband just showed up. This wasn't a situation of a get. This was a situation of assumed death, which was discovered to be untrue. Now, there's a second one. If the husband goes ahead and he does this in front of one witness, not two witnesses, one witness, then the nullification is no good. The get is valid, but the Chachamim said, since he went ahead and against the takanas of the Chachamim, they nullified retroactively his marriage. They go back in time and say the kedushin he did was no good. Now, what kind of game is this? What kind of trick is this? You nullify someone's marriage retroactively. The only thing I know in Judaism is if it's either the husband's death or a get for them to get divorced, for them to get separated. There's no other option. How can you go retroactively and nullify a marriage? The answer is, when we get married, we say, Kadas Moshe v'Yisrael. So we're stipulating in the marriage, right, in the request, in the proposal to the wife, that I'm marrying you like the sages said. Now, if I do something against the sages, and the sages decided that this can be a reason to go back and nullify your original marriage, they have a right to do so, because you agreed at the time of your marriage to do it based on their rules. That's the way it works. That's the truth. So what did he do? What he did was, he said the following. He right away told the husband to come in to the Bezdin, and he told him right away, I want you to write a get for your wife, who's right now remarried to this man. Write a get for your wife.
A new husband?
No. The survivor who walked in. Write a get for your wife. And before I give the get to your wife, as your shliach, before you give it to your wife, I want you to go right now to the person next door. There's one person next door, you'll see him, and tell him, I hereby nullify the get, and I'm doing this only under duress. And the Pesach Yisrael said, by doing so, what is he in essence doing? He's going to undo the original kedushin. So she was never married to him to begin with. And if so, she's now truly married to the second husband, and the children are not mamzer. This was an insane... Yeah, this was an...
It's retroactive?
Correct, yeah. So this was an insane trick that Pesach Tzvi Frank was no small rabbi. He was
Even though it was a trick, the guy didn't really feel that way at all.
Correct. So this was a big machlekes in his time, but this is something he did in order to help save the situation of mamzer. In any event,
No, obviously not in this case.
His Bezdin accepted this. His Bezdin accepted it. He was the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim. And his Bezdin accepted this method, and that's what they did.
Will this fly today?
This is actually standardly done in these type of situations, just in case. For example, if the Bezdin gave a heter for a certain woman to remarry, based on the death of her husband, and it ended up being discovered that her husband never died, which is very rare today with social media and everything, but it happens sometimes. It happens. So the standard practice of Bati Dinim is that they actually do this. They have the husband come in and do a meidah. Why? And not to allow her to stay married to the new husband. She gets divorced from him as well. But in order, just in case, 20 years down the line, when these mamzerim now want to get married, the courts have the ability of relying on this to release them from their mamzer status.
And
That's
there's
the
this
reason.
whole specific 1 step, 2 step, 3
Yeah,
step, he goes to the
yeah,
next
that's
to
the way
go to
it's
that
done.
guy and say this,
Mhm.
whoa.
So the whole purpose is to release the children.
Yeah, of course. That's,
The woman
and
too.
also, of course, it ends up retroactively causing that she didn't do adultery, that there wasn't Isha Ish. She wasn't. On the other hand, again, there's a big machleka. The Shulchan and Aruch was very against this. He argued on Pesach Sweet Frank.
Okay, but the whole scenario then allows the woman to stay married to the quote
No,
unquote.
she will not stay married to him. No, this is just to save the mamzer.
So what does she have to do? She has to.
Nothing. She accepts the get.
She accepts-
Afterwards, they give her a normal get.
So
They
she's,
rewrite a normal get afterwards, and they give her a normal get.
so she's not married to the old husband.
But she married someone else?
And she.
Yeah, even an adulterous woman who did it purposely is allowed to marry a third guy. The Gemara doesn't suggest it for the guy, but he's
She
allowed
can't go
to.
back and marry them. She can't get married to the one she married.
No, asur labal, asur labayil.
And she can't marry the resurrected husband.
Resurrected husband. No. She cannot. She cannot, no. But another interesting point in this is that some say in such a situation to tell the husband to go in hiding. Don't tell anybody. Don't go to the town. Don't let anybody know you're alive. If nobody knows, then they're continuing to live based on the heter. So no one knows that you're a mamzer. No one knows the kids are a mamzer. In other words, the kids are not mamzer because no one knows he's alive. You're the only guy who knows you're alive. So if you change your identity, so what do you do in such situations? It's very tricky. Do you go and make a whole issue, or do you keep it silent? Do we say ignorant is bliss in here, or do we say not?
What about the situation?
The bottom line is that we tell them that you do have to go. One of the reasons is because it's brought down that a mamzer doesn't live a long life. They die right away. Hashem kills them off. Hashem makes them die in infancy. Mamzer. Now it's asked, the Gemara asks, if so, how can we see so many mamzerim that are living? There's some mamzerim that are in charge of the political, establishment. They got very high positions. So what do you mean Hashem knocks them off in their infancy? It's explained. When people don't know their mamzerim. People know the mamzerim. Hashem doesn't, make miracles in front of. If Hashem made statistically all these miracles, then people would just be religious. There would be no sign, no challenge. So when people don't know that this child's a mamzer, Hashem takes care of it. They don't live a long life. They don't live a long life. So if he doesn't make an issue of this, what's going to be with the children?
What's the status of the guy who's been beaten up to force? He obviously is doing it under duress, even though he might make.
That's something else. That's another issue. That's something else.
But that stands. That kind of gets stands, even though he's.
If the best, according to Allah, he had to give the divorce, then yes. If according to Allah, someone has to divorce his wife, and the Bezdin paskin that he has to divorce his wife. They didn't suggest. They said, according to Jewish law, you must give your wife a get, and he refuses. So even though you can't, Bezdin doesn't have authority to hit him today based on legal laws, legal standing. But a lot of them use, the mafia. What was the mafia created for? They hire some hooligans. No, honestly, they hire some hooligans, and give the guy a nice beating until better give a get than.
The baby got burned.
That's under duress.
Yesterday, 2 days ago, here in France. I just heard it was because of he got deals with the mafia. His father had dealings with the mafia. So they said, I go in his house.
Okay, we should never know such things.
Here in
A
France.
few more points. Speaking Hebrew in a bathroom. So, Lashon HaKodesh, there are opinions who rule is forbidden to be spoken in a bathroom. We do not rule this way, okay, that it is forbidden, but nonetheless, the Alter Rebbe concludes that it's an act of piety not to. So, if any of you like practicing your Hebrew, the bathroom is not the best place to do it. Try to speak in English, keep the English in the bathroom. No, Hebrew books is fine. Speaking, okay? Speaking, we try to. No, I'm talking about, you're right. That's when you're using the bathroom. Let's say I'm brushing my teeth. Let's say I'm taking a shower. Let's say I'm looking in the mirror. I don't know. People do many things in bathrooms, not just use it.
What about the office? You're only putting when you're actually.
Correct. Yes. Very 100%. We clarified this when we discussed this originally, that the Isser of speaking is only when you're doing your actual needs. But if a person, some people have a bathroom that's as large as this room, mansions.
Listening to the news
They can
in the
live. They
bathroom.
can live in their bathroom.
English also, you were saying, you learned already, English you're not allowed to speak either in the bathroom. When you do, whatever.
English,
also.
I understand. I'm talking about here when you're not doing your needs. When you're not doing your needs, it's permitted to speak. But Hebrew, we avoid speaking. Also, a bathroom that doesn't have a toilet in the mikveh. In let's say the breast of mikveh right here, which has hot water, right, hot showers. So the Ari mikveh is all cold. You can speak whatever you want, so long as you don't see someone's erva. But in hot mikvahs, then you have a restriction. What's the restriction? You're not allowed to speak. So the best thing is also not to try not to speak in Hebrew. The best thing is not to speak.
Or English,
If I listen to the
It
Hebrew,
doesn't have a toilet. or a
Doesn't matter.
toilet.
That's okay. Huh?
The toilet is not accessible, it's not much part of it. Like a door.
A toilet and a mikvah that's hot has the same halacha, same din. A bathhouse and a bathroom have the same law.
What's the issue with Hebrew and English? I understand. We don't even answer.
Hebrew's a holy language.
You're not allowed to speak English either, we talked about already.
That's only when you actually on the toilet seat.
Okay, on the toilet, so when you're brushing your teeth, you can speak English, when you're
You can
doing
speak
whatever?
Hebrew also. It's just the best thing. It's better to avoid. Better to avoid Hebrew. An act of piety for this. God's name is not allowed to be mentioned in the bathroom. Okay. So yeah, that's the abbreviation. You can also technically say Hashem. Hashem is not his name. It means the name. Okay, you're not saying his name. But people avoid saying Hashem even though it's mutter. But God for sure, for certain, is forbidden to say in the bathroom. Dollar bill that says "In God We Trust" you can't bring into a bathroom unless it's in two coverings, because it has God's name on it, and so on and so forth. All these cases are the like. You have a lot of books that have God in them. It's a problem to bring into a bathroom. Doesn't matter who wrote it.
Get a dollar from the radio?
Even if it
says,
is written by a
"God we
guy.
trust," it's not just dollar of the Rebbe, it's every dollar.
Rabbi, I heard that when it's written by a guy, it doesn't have the same signification. Could even erase it.
It's the same problem. No. A person, God's name is written, we treat it with
What about the
kedusha.
Sefer Torah which has been written by a guy?
The halach is if
There
it's
is no
written by a
kedusha.
min. If written by a min, it's burnt. We burn it. Yeah, you can burn the dollar bill. I agree with you. You can't put it into a bathroom. Burning is not desecrating it. Burning is put it away so it doesn't get desecrated. Why does it say? Why does it say that the Sefer Torah written by a min has to be burnt? Just do whatever you want with it. Use it as toilet paper. Why does it say burn it? That's why. Because you're not allowed to use it for anything but
Is
little.
it covered?
Doesn't matter who writes it. Doesn't matter who writes a name.
So how would you be able to bring something like the Mishpacha magazine and
If they has God's name and
I mean,
if they write G-O-D, they shouldn't. All Jewish publications should be doing G-D.
Right, I understand that part, but as far as the quote, sukkim.
Torah.
Yeah, so as I said before, a Torah thing should not be done into a bathroom. I did mention that. If it's a Mishpacha magazine that does, I don't read Mishpacha, I don't know what's in it, okay? But if it contains Torah, Torah verses or Torah subjects, then obviously you can't bring it in. Even though some people say we follow the majority of what it is, but the best thing is not to bring it in. You can rip out a page of a story, that's not a problem, and bring it in. But yes, I agree, there are a lot of publications that we are held back from bringing in because it is written in English, G-O-D.
Somebody has to listen to the news.
Yeah, what's wrong with listening to the news? I mean, there's no better place in the bathroom to listen to the news,
Exactly.
right? Fake news.
it fits each other.
Politics.
There is no kedusha.
As I once heard from a Rav, that the only part of the newspaper that is maybe true and you don't have to throw in the garbage is the date. And sometimes the date is also off because they print it really the next morning. The date's ready for the day before. But usually that's the only part that's true. Anyways, okay. Regarding answering Amen, it is forbidden to answer Amen in a bathroom. There is no heter to do so. I don't know why some people have some confusion in this. If you hear a bracha and you're in the bathroom, it's forbidden to answer Amen. There's no heter to do so. We don't say the word Shabbos in the bathroom, as Shabbos is also considered Shalom. I'm sorry, we don't say Shalom in the bathroom. Shalom is considered Shabbos name. And some places, we also don't say Shabbos. This is the opinion of the Zohar. Shabbos is also considered holy, and therefore we don't want to desecrate. And that's why I believe it's the Munkacher, writes that because of this, Ashkenazim say not Shabbat Shalom, but Shabbos. It's not the real word. Shabbos is not the real word.
Shabbos is okay.
It's not the real word.
What about
Shabbat.
Sukkot? Can you say Sukkot?
The Yom Tov.
If somebody reads when he's reading the Torah, so Shabbos, everybody's going to scream at him. What's Shabbos?
Sabbatical reputation.
Regarding learning and davening near a bathroom, it is permitted to do so long as the bathroom is not its own four-walled home, such as the bathroom we have over here in the park. That bathroom, it is forbidden to learn or daven while you can see it or within 4 amos of it, but all other bathrooms are permitted so long as you can't see the actual toilet. If you can see the toilet itself is considered like a graf shurui.
Even if it's clean.
Doesn't matter. You can see the toilet.
It's closed.
If the door is closed, and
No,
you can't see
the
the toilet.
toilet is closed.
No, it doesn't matter. The toilet itself, the whole toilet is considered a graf shurui. It's a potty. It's made of earthenware. It's the din of a potty. Clearly, it's forbidden to daven and learn if you can see the toilet. If you can't see the toilet, the door is closed, or you're not within your eyesight, then it's mutter to daven and learn. Okay, we're going to just begin. I want to just begin. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's just begin the first halach. We have a few minutes, right? We started at 8:30 now. 4 minutes left. I want to just begin Siman Daled. Siman Daled is the longest siman that we've done so far. In the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he actually reorganizes these halachas, and a lot of the halachas of the Mechaber are actually placed in chapter 1. We didn't do it. I saved it for this chapter, the Mechaber, because that's the order we're going in. But I'm just saying, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he basically takes like half of these halachas, discusses them already in chapter 1, and the other half he saves for this chapter, chapter 4. But the general subject of chapter 4 is Natilas Yadayim, washing hands in the morning. Now, the reason why the Alter Rebbe splits it up is because morning washing contains 2 completely separate subjects relating to it, which are independent of each other, even though they sound to be related. One of them is the idea of this evil spirit that we have on our hands prior to washing, after we wake up in the morning. That Alter Rebbe deals with in Siman Aleph, and partially also in Siman Daled, but also in Siman Aleph. The second is the technical laws of how to wash properly in the morning. You know, all the laws in the Natilas Yadayim. How do you pick up the vessel? How do you pour in your hands? How much of your hand has to be poured on? Etc., etc. All those detailed laws of the actual washing. So chapter 1 is dealing more with the pre-washing laws, while chapter 4 is dealing with the actual washing itself. We're just going to begin the first few halachas. Yirchatz yodo ve'yivorech al natilas yadayim. In the morning, a person is to wash his hands and to say the blessing of Al Natilas Yadayim. Says the Ramah, and some poskim say that also Asher Yatzar is to be said, even if one did not use the bathroom, and so is the custom. This the Alter Rebbe brings in chapter 6 in the beginning. There's a machlekes regarding for what purpose was Asher Yatzar established to be said in the morning blessings. Normally, what we know of Asher Yatzar is that it's a bathroom bracha. Go to the bathroom, say Asher Yatzar. But some say, and so thereby, we would assume that usually most people use the bathroom in the morning. So the sages placed Asher Yatzar as part of Beichas Hashach, because usually you go to the bathroom, so you say Asher Yatzar. And what if you didn't go to the bathroom that morning? You didn't. Let's say you went to the bathroom at 12 o'clock, you woke up at 6 o'clock, the body did what it needed to do already, it doesn't feel like going again. Do you say Asher Yatzar now when you wake up? Or do you not say Asher Yatzar? So if it's a bathroom-based bracha, of course you don't say. But the Abu Daram, which the Ramah here brings, says that no, Asher Yatzar of the morning is to be said even if you didn't do your needs. Why? Because let's think about the wording. We're blessing and praising God for creating man anew. Asher Yatzar sa'adam b'chachma. We woke up in the morning anew, a fresh creation. So we say Asher Yatzar. This is the Ashkenazi ruling. Ashkenazi ruling is that we say Asher Yatzar even if we did not use the bathroom the night before, as it's going on being a new creation, Bria Chadasha.
It doesn't talk about that. It talks about the orifices and blessed that Hashem can heal all.
Yeah, and we're blessing God for creating that whole system new and fresh and making it work again. Yeah, sure. I mean, in fact, I think this is actually very beautiful, this interpretation, because otherwise, how do we not have a bracha thanking Hashem for the way our body works, aside from when we go to the bathroom? We should be thankful just in general, stop, that things are working, that everything's fine. So this is the Ashiyatz according to Ashkenazi custom. The answer is being said, in addition for going to the bathroom, also for being a new creation and having everything working. Bottom line, the Alter Rebbe rules this way as well, but he does say that it's proper to try to go to the bathroom beforehand if you are able to. Mayim apsul natilas yadayim l'seuda, kshem natilas yadayim l'tfila, miyesh mishan d'lei v'achalayu. The Mechaber here says that the laws applicable towards washing hands for bread are not the same as the laws of washing hands for davening or washing hands, in this case, from the morning. And there are some differences between them. This we will learn coming up. Again, next week we're going to do Shavuos, so this is going to be pushed off to 2 weeks from now. Okay.
Rabbi Marzel went out of his way to basically force upon me after raining, and so did Yaakov Charles. They wouldn't leave me alone all day long. So anybody who needs to go, please have a nice evening, and if you can stay a few minutes.